The recording has started. Good afternoon once again to everyone. So we're continuing chapter 7.3 where we're looking at how to create or develop a spreadsheet. So the main feature or the main tool that we use in spreadsheets is basically the functions and formulas. That's what we use for all of our calculation and basically everything that we're doing. We're using functions and formula. So the last class we looked at a formula. These are some of the methods of creating a formula. A formula can be using actual values. You can type in equal 2 plus 2. That is a formula. Or a formula can have cell addresses equal A1 plus A2. That is another example of a formula. Or you can use a combination of cell address and the actual value. Just excuse me for a second. Yes, sorry about that. We're currently organizing this Artichang conference thing tomorrow. Who's going and who's not going. Yeah, so as I was saying, this is how you create a formula. Now function, so if you notice with the formula, you have to create the mathematical operations. You have to create the equations that you're going to be carrying out. So you have to put in your signs, whether it's multiplication, whether it's addition, division, subtraction. You have to put in your signs for those formulas. Now when it comes to a function, the difference, you must remember the difference. The difference between a function and a formula is that the function already has the equation built into the system. It already has all of the signs, everything that is needed into the system built in. All you need to do now is to give it the value. So, for example, the last class we looked at the average function. And this is basically how you create that average function. You start with the equal sign, you type in the name of the function, and you put the whatever value inside of the bracket to give it that to give it the source of the data and to carry out that calculation. So for instance, we could type in a range of number like this here. We just do those three numbers equal average, and we highlight that range and we get our average here. Now if we were to do it in a formula format, we know it's simply adding the three numbers together. So 2 plus, or we can even use the cell name, A1 plus A2 plus A3, and then divided by 3, and that gives us our average. Now if you notice, we got a different answer here. Anybody could tell me why? simple maths problem, why do we get a different answer? A very simple formula problem. BODMAS. Yes, BODMAS with an O. So, what do we need to do? What do we need to add? Come on, nobody knows what's happening here. This is a very simple maths problem. This is nothing related to spreadsheet. This is maths. A very simple maths. A plus A2. Let me break it down again. We know that to find the average of any group of numbers, you add all of those numbers together and you divide by the amount of those numbers. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm adding the three numbers, adding A1 plus A2 plus A3, and then I'm dividing by 3 because I have three numbers. You guys following?
Yes, sir.
So, it's a simple BODMAS issue that we have right now. What do we have to do? Or why are we getting a different answer? Why are we not getting 3.3?
So, go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. So, how I'm looking at it, because we're dealing with BODMAS and a division comes first, so what it does is that it divides 5 divided by the 5 divided by 3, sorry, by 5, and so they do the division and then they do the addition.
Right. And is that what we need?
Pardon?
Is that what we need? Do we need the division first? What do we need first?
Need to add.
Right. So how
and then
would,
divide.
Right, that's correct. So seems Africa is only one familiar with BODMAS. That what's happening right now is that division is happening first. It's dividing A3 by 3. That's what's happening first here. We do not want the division to happen first. So, in this situation here, what we need to do is to put what we want to calculate first in brackets. A simple maths issue, BODMAS. So, we take the addition and we put it into a bracket, indicating that whatever is in the bracket, we want that to be calculated first. So if I was to take out these, I don't know if the cell names is what is confusing you. So if I place 2 plus 3 plus 5, hopefully this looks a little better to you. We're adding 2 plus 3 plus 5 first because we place that in bracket, and then we are going to divide by 3. And now we are going to get our correct answer. So this is why you have to understand and remember how BODMAS works so that you can create formulas effectively. Are we following?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What about the rest of you?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Hopefully you are. So, Now, as I was saying, if you notice the average function or any function, you do not need to put in any operator. I did not need to, on the left hand side here, I did not need to put in any addition sign. I did not need to put in any division sign. All I needed to do is to give it its value, to say simply, these are the values that you need to calculate the average for. So this is the difference between a function and a formula, and I need you to remember that. A function does not have any operators. Everything is built into the function. You just need to give it its value that it needs. Whereas the formula, you have to give it its value and the operation. You have to create what calculation needs to be carried out. Alright, so let's move on to another function. Today we're going to be starting with the count A and the count function. There's actually three count function. There's the count if also. So we're going to start off with count A and count. Now remember the syntax. This is the key part you need to remember, is how to build that function, how to create it. So equal sign, count A, and in bracket, just like average, you put in the range of cells. Same for count also. Equal count, and in bracket, you put in the range of cells. So what does it do? These functions count the number of cells in a range. Please note, it is counting the number of cells. What are we calling cells? We are calling each rectangle that you're seeing here a cell. Each rectangle is a cell. So if I highlighted all of these cells here, I basically just highlighted 9 cells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is 9 cells here. So we're not counting how much information is inside of the cell. It doesn't matter what is inside of the cell. What we're counting is the number of the cells. That is what we're counting. So notice that counts the numbers in a range. So count is when you want to count if a range of cells has numbers inside of it. Whereas count A counts numbers and any other type of data. So let me show you an example. So including text and non-blank cells. So let me show you an example, and you'll see the difference between the two of them. So you can start creating the same thing. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is going to be my count function, and this is going to be my count A function. So I'm going to type in count equal count open brackets, and I'm going to highlight this range here. So equal count and highlight the range, enter, and notice I got 6. Why 6? Because I have 6 cells that has numbers inside of them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to delete the 1. Notice it reduced to 5. I'm going to delete the 2. Notice it was reduced to 4. I'm going to keep deleting, and notice the count keeps reducing. Now notice it doesn't matter what number I type in. The count is still going to range between 1 to 6. So it's not counting how much information is in the cell. It's just simply counting how much cells have a number inside of it. Are we following?
Yes, sir.
Alright, so create that. Create that on your computer. Type in any amount of numbers and create this function here, equal count, and you highlight your range that has those numbers inside of it. Okay, just tell me verbally that you finished creating that, and then we move on to the next one.
Done.
Okay, Melroy, you can try Google Sheets if you're not on your computer.
Finish.
Good.
Finish.
Alright. Alright, good. Seems majority of you have completed that.
Yeah, finish, sir.
Great. So let's move on to the next function now. The count A. Count A counts numbers and any other type of data. Text, symbols, non-blank cells, and so on. So it's just like the count, equal count A, open bracket, and highlight the same range. I want you to highlight the same range as your count so that you can see the difference between the two. So create that. So basically the only difference is that you're putting an A after count. So notice both have 6. Both have the number 6. But let me simplify the numbers. Both have the number 6. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to change 1 to the letter A. So notice count dropped to 5. Count just dropped to 5. So that indicates that, remember, count only counts numbers. So count only counts numbers. So please remember that. Count only counts numbers. So that's why this one dropped to 5. Whereas count A counts all data. Count A counts all data. So that's why this is still at 6. So if I change 2 to a symbol, ampersand symbol, notice count A is still at 6, whereas count is dropping. It dropped to 4. Now I'm going to delete 3. So notice it does not count cells that are empty. It is looking for data. So notice count A has 5. So I only have 5 cells here with data inside of it. So I'm going to add back YOU. So notice count A got increased back to 6 and count is at 3. So count is only counting these 3 numbers here, whereas count A is counting everything. So create that, try that, see if you get it to work.
Yes, sir, it works.
Good. You can change up the values also to see the difference it's going to make. Alright, Stephanie's finished. Gayatri, Trinity.
I already did mine.
Okay, good. Alright. Amisha, you getting through?
Just sure.
Alright, good. So that there is the difference between count and count A. So not gonna read through that. That's basically a description there. Now our next count. Count if. The big word if. Now whenever you hear this word if, I want you to think of the word criteria. Because whenever we have this word if, we are going to have something that is called a criteria. And when I'm explaining this word criteria, I like to use the word question. So whenever we have a criteria, it's basically like if we're asking a question. Like for instance, say every morning when you go to school, the criteria is that you must be in school uniform. You must have a tie. You must have a badge. That is the criteria in order for you to pass through that gate. You must be in school uniform. You must have a tie. You must have a badge. You must be wearing a certain color socks. You must be wearing a certain color footwear. Those are called criteria. You must meet those criteria in order to pass through the gate. Or you can phrase it this way. Are you wearing a badge? Yes. If the answer is yes, then you can pass through the gate. If the answer is no, you won't be allowed in. Are you wearing a tie? If the answer is yes, you can walk through the gate. If the answer is no, you have to go back home. So you can think of it that way. A criteria is like if you're asking a question. So the count if, the syntax for the count if is equal count if, and notice it has two parts. Always note that the comma indicates the separation between arguments in that syntax. Remember we learned in our last class that an argument is the cell reference, the range of cells, the constants that we are going to put into the function in order for it to work. So the range of cell is the argument. So notice our count if has two arguments. It has 1, the range of cells, and 2, the criteria. So basically, the count if, we are going to be asking a question, and based on the answer to that question, we're going to see if how many persons meet that criteria. For instance, we could say how many persons got greater than 50% overall. That is an example of count if. Count how many persons got greater than 50%. Count how many persons got greater than 60%. Count how many persons got less than 50%. That is an example of count if. So let's look at how we create it now. So this is the count if function. Equal count if, open bracket. Now note whenever you're creating a function, it gives you the description, or it gives you the syntax below it. So if you notice right now, The count if is before the bracket, and if you can see, the range is bold compared to criteria. Notice criteria looks a bit dull and range is bold. If I put comma, notice criteria is now bolded. This indicates which part of the syntax you're currently working in. So it's good to look at this here when you're working on your syntax. It tells you which part of the syntax you're currently working on. So currently I'm entering the range because that's before the comma. So the range, just like the two counts before, I need to highlight my range. So I'm going to highlight my range there, E1 to E6. And then after the comma, in double quotation marks, I need to put my criteria. I need to put my question. So the questions are usually the same operators, the logic operators that we know about. So more than, less than, equal to, more than equal to, less than equal to. Those are examples of questions that we can ask. So is something more than, is something less than, is something equal to, is something greater than equal to? Those are our criterias, those are our questions that we need to ask. So in bracket, in quotation mark here, I simply need to type in greater than whatever question I would like to answer. So for instance, if I want greater than 50, I type in greater than 50. So once again, equal count if, open bracket, you put the range of data that you want to count, and then you put the criteria for that range. So it's like if in this group of grades here, I want to count how many persons got greater than 50%. So for instance, if I type in a set of grades like this here, then in this range here now, I could count how many persons got greater than 50%. I can do the same for less than also. How many persons got less than 50? Notice I got 2 now. So we got 2. We got 40 and we got 20. Everything else here is greater than 50 or equal to 50. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Anybody not following? Amlina? Oceana, you following? Alright. You guys can start creating this here now. Start creating your if function. Your count if function. And alright.
Alright, in mind.
So just turn on your formula view and just send me a picture of everything you've done so far in the group. Let me just ensure you're going well so far. Yeah, so send me a picture of those 3. Africa,
Yes, sir.
is a picture you send there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's happening with my phone. I'm not seeing pictures. Send it as a one-time view. For some reason, I'm seeing one-time view.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As.
Oh, but it didn't show up for me. I'm seeing Gayatri Zone. Alright, ones you got through. Amisha, Amelina, Nathan, Oceana, Trinity.
Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, Amisha doesn't have a phone.
Real.
Sir, how do you check the like the formula you show to show count like how you have it there in each?
CTRL and so hold CTRL and the tilde key.
Okay.
Was that your question? No? I didn't focus on the question. Nathan? Okay. Trinity got through. Oceana's computer is freezing. Alright. And Amelina got hers. Okay, good. Okay. Oh, what we can also try, we can look for a particular word also. So, say for instance, we want to count how many of the word cat is appearing inside of a range. So, notice my criteria is the word cat. So, I could type in dog, cat, rat, mouse, and notice my count if the criteria is set to cat, so it's counting how many cats are inside of how many time the word cat is appearing inside of these cells here in this range. So if I change it to cats, notice it's going to drop back to 1 because even though it has cat here, it's not the exact word that I'm looking for. Even if I space it, still not going to work because this is not exactly what I have inside of my question, my criteria. So the criteria can also work on words, not only numbers. You can look for exact words. Let me see if we can search for wildcards. See asterisk. Yeah, even wildcards can work. So an asterisk is called a wildcard. What do we mean by wildcard? A wildcard is, it can represent information that we don't know. So for instance, this asterisk here is representing everything that comes after the letter C. So what this here means that anything that starts with the letter C, it is going to look for. The asterisk represents any number of characters following the letter C. So for instance, if I change rat to caterpillar, notice I get 3 there now. So because I have C asterisk, so everything that starts with C is going to be counted. If I type in C and anything else, notice I have 4 there now. So try this here. You can look for a particular word. You can try the wildcard. So asterisk, the asterisk symbol is used as a wildcard. The asterisk symbol is used as a wildcard. Wildcard represents all unknown data. So that's the purpose of the wildcard. So C asterisk, the asterisk representing everything that comes after C. You guys tried it?
Yes, sir.
Now you can also put the asterisk in front of the C. So if C asterisk is going to look for everything that starts with the letter C, what do you think was going to happen if you put the wildcard in front of the letter C? What do you think it's going to look for?
Anything that has letters before, like C.
Good. Or anything that ends with the letter C, because C is going to actually be the last letter. So anything that ends with the letter C, that's what it's going to look for. So I'm going to press enter. Notice I have 0, because if you look through the information, nothing ends with the letter C. So I'm going to type something and then put the letter C at the end. And notice I now have 1. I'm going to put dog with a C at the end. And notice I now have 2. So this is the purpose of wildcards. It helps you to pinpoint or to look for data that you don't know what is the missing piece of that data. So this is how you can look for something that ends with a particular letter, or how you can look for something that starts with a particular letter. So D asterisk is looking for everything that starts with the letter D. Now you can also do a starting with a letter and also ending with a letter. So for example, I could say starting with the letter starting with the letter D and ending with the letter C. So notice I have 1 here because I have dog starting with the letter D and ending with the letter C. So D and ending with C. So notice I now have 2 here. I could also do starting with C, ending with Y. Notice I now have 1 because I have this here starting with C, ending with Y. So if I put a Y at the end of caterpillar, notice I now have 2. So you can try this here also. The wildcard is going to go into the center and look for anything that starts with that particular letter and ends with that particular letter. So try that. So A asterisk looks for everything starting with the letter A. Asterisk A looks for everything ending with the letter A, and A asterisk A, or put B, looks for everything starting with the letter A and ending with the letter B. Good. So far we looked at 3 count functions. We looked at count, which only counts numbers. We looked at count A, which counts all types of data, numbers, letters, symbols, everything. And then lastly, we looked at the count if. The count if looks for a criteria, looks at the data to see who matches the criteria. So remember, criteria basically means question. So criteria equal question, and some of your questions could be more than, less than, equal to, more than equal to, less than equal to. Those are some examples of your questions that you can ask. Or you can look for a word. In quotation mark, you're looking for a particular word. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
you also looked at the criteria, not the criteria, the wildcard. The wildcard uses to represent certain data, certain part of the data that we don't know exists. So A asterisk, it looks at everything starting with A. Asterisk A looks at everything ending with A. And A asterisk B looks at everything that starts with A and ends with the letter B. So that's the 3 count function there. Anybody with any questions? Alright, no questions. Let's move on. Alright, so we're finished with count. Now, let's look at the date function. Now, the date function, as the name implies, is used to combine values in 3 cells to produce the date. So this is the syntax. It has 3 arguments. So what the date function does, in 3 cells, we are going to have these information inside of them, and it's going to combine it and give you the date. Now, it might not make sense as to type in the those information into cells, but that's how the function works. So year, month, day, and in those cells you need to type in what's the year. So the year 2022, the month, we're in the 12th month, and the day is the 13th. So we type in those values. So I'm just going to put date there so that we can see we're creating the date function. So what I need you to remember is that notice the order of the arguments. The year comes first, the month comes second, and then the day. If you put it in any other order, it's going to give you the date based on the order you put in the information. But the year always has to come first, so equal date, open bracket. Notice the hint at the bottom here. Year is first, so I'm going to select that year cell, comma. Notice when I put in the comma, month is now highlighted, so I need to select the month, comma, and now day is highlighted, so I need to select the day. When I press enter, notice I have today's date, the 12 month, 13 date, and the year 2022. The system by default, puts the month first, then day, and then year. That's how they show the date. But remember, we learned about formatting. So if you want to change that, you go to more formatting, and you can put the day first. So which one is day first? Why none of these have the day first? Good. So this one has the day first. So 13th of December 2022. So that's how this function here works. So as I was saying, if you put the values in the wrong position, obviously you're going to get the wrong date. So if I selected month first, then I selected year, and then I selected date, you're going to get a totally different date because you didn't put it based on the order of the argument. So year, then month, then day, and you're going to get that year there, that date. Alright, try creating that. Try creating the date function. Just let me know when you've completed that. Alright, Guide you finish, Amisha finish, Trinity. Africa and Nathan. Oceana. Oceana, your computer started working or still freezing?
Finish, sir.
Alright. Who said Oceana? Didn't hear it clearly.
It's working now, sir. Finish.
Still didn't hear that clearly.
Finish.
Alright. Good. So that there is the...
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. So that there is the date function. Now, anybody thinking that this doesn't make sense? It's too much work? When you could just simply type in the day. 13, 12, 2022. Anybody thinking that? Or is it just me?
I think in the same thing.
Yeah, you can think that way. That it might be a waste of time. But remember, you can think of it like from a business perspective, or like from persons that are working with a lot of information, working with a lot of data. Remember, in some cases, you might want to like get information right away. So this like might be a quick way to get information. So like say for instance, let me give you an example. Sometimes somebody might what they might tell you that the day, the month, date, and year. Just for some reason, they tell you the month, day, and year, and you gotta go and figure out now what's the actual date. So having this already created, you can simply type in, look, that the year was 1990, the month was the 9th month, the day was the 25th, and you get a quick output as to what is the date. So you don't have to go and hurt your head and wonder what's the combination of this date gives you that particular date. So that's just one example there of how that can be used. Now, the more beneficial one is going to be the today's date function. So today, that's going to give you today's date. It's a very simple function. Equal today, open and close bracket, and you're going to get today's date. So if you guys can remember, when we started function, we said that certain functions do not use arguments, and this is one of those functions. The today function. It doesn't have any arguments inside of it, but you still need that open and close bracket. Saying something, Nathan? Alright, so that gives you today's date. Try it out. Let me know if you get it to work. You can see today's date. If you try it tomorrow, you can see tomorrow's date. It would always keep changing based on the day that you would have entered it.
Yes, sir, it works.
Alright, good. Let's see. If is going to take up a little bit of time, so we're going to put a pause in class today. I don't want us to rush through, cover too much information, and then we're not focusing and so on. So remember what we covered so far for the day. We covered what is the difference between a function and a formula. Remember, a function does not have any operators inside of it. Only the formula has operators. You actually see the equation in a formula. That's the difference between the two. And please remember how BODMAS works. It's very important for you to know how to create a formula. We looked at the count function. Remember that is used to count only numbers. Count is used to only count numbers. Count A is used to count all types of data. But remember, it doesn't count blank cells. If the cell is empty, it does not count it. So if I delete everything, notice everything is going to be 0 because it does not count blank cells. Count if counts based on a criteria. What is a criteria? A criteria is basically a question. What are your questions? If something is greater than, if something is less than, if it's equal to, not equal to. Remember, you can also search for a particular word, a particular letter, and you can use the wildcard if you don't know what you're looking for. So if you want to find something starting with a particular letter or ending, you would make use of the wildcard. Then lastly, we looked at the date function. So it creates the date based on information in 3 cells. And then we looked at the today's date function, which gives you the current date, today's date. So any questions before we close off?
No, sir.
Alright, no questions. So that will be it for today. Enjoy the rest of your day.